member in the Free Church Gaelic congregation in the town. The late Reverend James MacLeod, in the excellent obituary he wrote of him, tells us that, and here I quote, "John Urquhart was a very shrewd observer of the times in which he lived, and we seldom, if ever, met a man who had such a clear discernment as to the conduct of men. He was seeing, along with many others, that the church to which he belonged and of which he was a professed member, namely the Free Church of 1843, was going to wreck and ruin by the destructive doctrines and practices of that church long before 1893. It is very remarkable that our worthy friend made up his mind, not rashly nor hastily, but thoughtfully and prayerfully, and by the guidance of the Word and Spirit, that if the Declaratory Act was to be passed by the Supreme Court of the Church, he would sever, as long as he was left in this world, his connection with the Free Church." End of quote. As we know, the Assembly of 1893 confirmed the Act by a large majority, and consequently on the first Sabbath after the 25th of May, 1893, John Urquhart remained at home with his Bible. Mr. MacLeod says, "He was a man of action and not of words." His absence from the church was noticed by several of his friends in the congregation, who called at his house to see if he was well. John then explained to them why he was absent and told them that he would never again worship in the Free Church. There being several elders among those who called, they, along with the members present, arranged there and then to have a prayer meeting that evening in John's house at 12 Lindog Street. In the words of the obituary, and here I quote, "This was the first Free Presbyterian prayer meeting held in Greenock, and they continued worshipping together until they were officially incorporated into the Free Presbyterian Church." End of quote. To begin with, and until the congregation was properly established, a committee was formed to look after the affairs of the congregation. This committee was later on called the Managing Committee of the Free Presbyterian Church of Scotland congregation in Greenock. Not much is known now about this committee, but in the good providence of the Lord, the name of one of its members has come to light recently, namely that of William Campbell, a native of Nig, Ross, and who was one of the men who joined with John Urquhart in the formation of the Greenock congregation. According to a tribute to his memory written in September 1894, it would appear that Mr. Campbell was a man who truly feared the Lord, and like John Urquhart, was very concerned about what was going on in the Free Church. He was, and here I quote from the tribute, "of a clear understanding and quick discernment in spiritual things. He was grieved at the tendency in Scotland to present a diluted theology, having been not only a man of true and personal piety, but also of principle. To Reformation and disruption principles he steadfastly and tenaciously and unflinchingly adhered. Consequently, he deeply deplored the abandonment by many of the principles contended for in the past by our godly forefathers, and used his influence both by precept and example to defend them. With that end in view, he took an active and prominent part in the formation of this committee and the congregation that it represents, in which he was a most respected and beloved elder. As an elder and as a member of this committee, he rendered the congregation invaluable services. Now, what is so very interesting about this step taken by John Urquhart and his friends in Greenock in May 1893 is that they acted on their own. It was not a case of following Mr. Macfarlane. In fact, they did not know that Mr. Macfarlane had left the Free Church till some time afterwards, as the following quotation from John Urquhart's obituary makes clear. Here I quote, "Great was the joy of John Urquhart and the rest of the Lord's people in this town, who had separated from the Declaratory Act Free Church, when they became acquainted with the fact that the Reverend Donald Macfarlane had also severed his connection with that church." End of quote. After the formation of the congregation, John Urquhart continued to live in Greenock and was for almost 40 years its mainstay. During those years, many of our young people from the Highlands and Islands were employed in the Greenock area, and found in John Urquhart a true and loving friend. In January 1932, Reverend James MacLeod was inducted as minister of the congregation, and Mr. Urquhart passed away to his everlasting rest in February 1934, aged 72 years. As we look back today with thankfulness over the past 100 years of the history of our church, let us not forget the very important part played in that history by men like John Urquhart and William Campbell. God has been pleased to raise up generation after generation, and has continued to do so to this day, godly and able laymen who have proved of great usefulness in connection with his cause in our midst. This has been true not only in this country, but in all the other parts of the world where our witness has been raised, in Canada, Australia and New Zealand, and in our congregations at the missions in Africa. May the Lord, who in his infinite mercy and compassion has helped us hitherto, continue to do so, and may our prayer be that the whole earth be filled with his glory. Thank you, Mr. MacLeod.
Thank you very much, Mr. MacLeod. I'm afraid I'll have to ask the remaining speakers to limit themselves to 10 minutes instead of 15 in order to get the matters proceeding as we would wish. I'll ask the Reverend D.B. MacLeod now to deal with the contribution of the students of 1893.
Mr. Moderator and friends, I intend to make a few remarks in connection with the contribution of the students of 1893, and also something of the life of one or two of them. When the Declaratory Act was passed in 1892, a number of the students for the ministry, some in divinity and some in arts, held a meeting and signed a bond stating that they ceased to prosecute their studies with a view to the ministry of the Declaratory Act Free Church. The account of the meeting and the bond reads as follows. A facsimile copy of it is to be found in the biography of John MacLeod, D.D. by Reverend G.N.M. Collins. The account says, a meeting of divinity and arts students opposed to the Declaratory Act was held in Glasgow on the evening of Wednesday, November 2nd, 1892. The finding of the meeting was as follows. Seeing the Declaratory Act is now an integral part of the Constitution of the Free Church of Scotland, we, the undersigned, have ceased to prosecute our studies with a view to the ministry of that church as now constituted. It was signed by 6 divinity